the latest episode of Charging the Agency Frontier. Today I'm talking to Mark Riggs, the founder and CEO of TPC Growth. TPC Growth is a management consultancy that exists to be the go-to resource for agencies to discover and reveal pathways to organic growth and changing the mindset of an RFP-obsessed industry. Before starting TPC Growth, Mark spent 20 years in the agency world working for IPG's Mullen Lowe, an Ad Age A-list agency, Taylor, the Holmes Report's consumer agency of the decade, MWWPR, and French West Vaughan, the Southeast's largest independent agency, where on 6 different occasions he grew small accounts into multi-million-dollar relationships. I've invited Mark on the show today to talk about organic growth for agencies as an approach to the agency paradigm of constantly chasing RFPs as a business driver. And TPC Growth helps agencies be proactive, opportunistic, and in tune with existing client partners that view an agency as an investment in their own growth strategy. So a lot of detail there, but Mark, anything you'd like to add about yourself before we begin? Anything I left out?
No, you hit all the highlights. I'm not classically trained. I was an English lit major and started out as a reporter and found my way after grad school in an agency. And in my late 20s, it just kind of took off from there. So I actually think not being classically trained has actually worked to my benefit to some degree because, I've been a little bullish, some time to learn what to do and what not to do, and cultivating my own approach and learning from a lot of smart people along the way, but a lot of on-the-job training. So I've actually always felt like that was to my benefit, quite honestly.
Yeah, awesome, cool. All right, well, let's dive right in. So first of all, I have to ask, why did you start TPC Growth, and what need did you see in the marketplace when you started?
Well, originally it was kind of out of a need for me. I've lived in Charlotte for off and on for 13 years and have worked for agencies that were located in other cities, mainly New York. I spent a lot of that time, commuting. And when I was at MWW, I was leading global business there. That agency was a great experience for me because that was the first time I'd led new business for an agency. And what I really started kind of crystallizing this idea was, toward the late 2017, maybe, it was like every other agency, they were looking to try to make their numbers and they were chasing every little small piece of business they could find. And at one point I found 19 RFPs on my desk. And I looked around the agency, which was a great agency, about a $44 million agency. And I said, listen, if we looked around from an organic perspective and just grew every account by 10%, you'd find multiple millions of dollars to achieve some numbers. And that just wasn't the approach. And so again, that's not a knock on that agency. It's a great agency. They were just doing things the way everybody else does, is chasing the RFP. So I stepped away from the agency business and I got pulled back in by doing some consulting with Omnicom PR Group. The CFO there is a former colleague of mine. She knew my history of growing accounts and was just the idea of like, hey, listen, there's a way to do new business beyond chasing the RFP. So, as I got in, I started doing consulting with those guys. I really started kind of crystallizing the approach. And, my joke is we're a society of liberal arts majors. Nobody knows how to rub 2 nickels together. And, if you're really good at churning butter, they put you in charge of all the butter churners. So by the time you're at that AD VP level, you haven't really been taught the business of the agency. You've been taught to do what you do really well, whether that's strategy or media relations or paid media, whatever your thing is, you do that really well. Then all of a sudden they give you all these responsibilities of trying to grow business and manage for margins and grow people and all those different things. It becomes a business for you when, I've always had the philosophy what I think was advantageous for me years ago at French West Vaughan was that I asked the question, how do we make money? As a young executive, how do we make money? And understanding that, how the agency works and operates, really inspired and drove me to operational excellence. So I understood what I was trying to achieve. And so I've always had that mentality of we are in business too. The agency signs my checks. And so it's not just here to bend over backwards for clients, which is our business. We are an account service. But the notion is like, we're also here to turn a dollar. And how do we do that in an effective way? And I just developed a couple of philosophies along the way of, you know, solve, don't sell. If you're solving a client's problems, the business will take care of itself. So, that's why they hire us. Obviously they want us to either be counselors or they want us to be order takers. It's really up to you and your agency which lane you want to fall into. But most of the time, it's a little part and parcel of both. But, clients want to be led. And so I felt like there was an opportunity to go out. And as I was working with some of these bigger agencies, I just really realized that, listen, from that SAE to AD level, there's a real opportunity to teach people the business of the agency. So when they are in positions of influence and having to lead business, et cetera, they're prepared. They understand what's at stake. They understand the margins. They understand, full-time employee numbers and need to bill and all those types of things. And so that's really was kind of the genesis of the whole thing is I was asked to do a job. And then by doing that job, I realized there was a real hole across the whole industry, and we're all victims of chasing the RFP. And there's more effective ways of growing your business.
Got it. Why do you believe that your approach to growing an agency's business should be a priority?
Well, I mean, like I just said, we're in business too, right? So, that there's now, I was reading recently in Forbes, there's now 120 agencies in this country. We're all smart, we're all different, we're all creative, we all get results, right? But what's the real true benefit of your agency? And I feel like what our approach does is we ask the agency owner or whoever's leading a new business or account leads, you got to have a very honest conversation with yourself, right? About why the business hasn't grown. And lots of times the excuses we use are, the client didn't understand what we were trying to do, or, all the excuses are put on the client when really the excuses should be, we didn't listen carefully, or we didn't, we let it get stale, those types of things. So I think lots of times it's like any kind of rehab program, it's admitting that you have a problem first and then really planning for yourself. And that's where we try to do for clients is lead them down a path where we're creating account plans against every client and trying to reveal those pathways of organic growth. And you can only do that if you're completely immersed in your business, the client's landscape, the category landscape, and you can understand and reveal those white spaces where you can lead them to those things. And that really helps you clarify and define the barriers to growth. And if you can define those barriers, you can solve a problem if you understand what the problem is. But, I think that, again, the thing that we're doing that I think is changing the paradigm for a lot of people is it's not just about growing the business account by account. It's also about changing the mindset of account leaders, of getting them to think of a different way. And I think once you can change the mindset of 1, 2, 3, however many account leaders you have in your organization, you start to see a paradigm shift in your organization about the way they're going to grow business. Because I think when we were coming along, Robby, it was cool and sexy to be in the closed room and the new pitch, right? Everybody, how do I get in that room? How do I get to be a part of the new business team? But nobody was really patting anybody on the back. It was sitting over in the corner growing a piece of business incrementally. But that to me is the real, it's more profitable. There's less diminishing return. There's less turnover of your clients. There's less turnover of your people. And so we're trying to coach all these things in. But really it's about having a plan and sitting and pumping the brakes. But after you sign that scope of work, instead of just saying, hey, let's hurry up and get going, it's let's take a moment to define how we're going to work together. And what's success look like? What is it like working with, if you were my client, what does Robby like and not like, that type of thing. And giving you a document where you can check in every couple of months and say, hey, how am I doing? Where am I winning? Where am I losing? And you're having those conversations in advance as opposed to, getting kicked out the door when you didn't check the gas is what we call it. Check the gas.
Yeah, love it. All right. Any fun facts about organic growth?
Yeah, I just had a couple. It's the fact that it is less expensive. You've got you've already won the business, right? You've done the hard part. I can't put my finger on the numbers now, but every agency is different depending on the size and the kind of business you're going after. But agency spends up tens and thousands of dollars on pitches, of going after new pieces of business. So it's less expensive. Like I said, there's less diminishing return. There's less revenue volatility. Quite honestly, you're able to, more predictive analytics as it relates to revenue and running your business. It's more profitable. And I think the benefit of the idea of great work, I had a CEO once told me, great work gets you more work, right? Good work will get you fired. And like I said, there's so many agencies out there who are, like sharks in chum. They're calling your clients. They're trying to take your business. So as a byproduct of doing great work, not only do you get more work, but you keep those other agencies at bay who are trying to get your business. So that to me is just a benefit and a byproduct of doing that.
Some insulation. Yeah, that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Where do you feel agencies are falling short when it comes to agency or to organic growth?
Proper planning. I do think it's proper planning in terms of, again, just getting the piece of business and running with it and really analyzing. We're so focused on getting results, which is paramount for sure. Rubber's got to hit the road somewhere, but I think we have to plan and really understand the clients that we're working with, the do's and the don'ts, their likes, their preferences. But the other thing that we're encouraging agencies to do is what we call a proactiveness appraisal, is get out in front and sit down with your account leaders on a regular basis and ask them some things like, are you regularly evaluating scopes of work? Are you leaving work on the table? Were there out of pockets that the agreement says you can take as revenue if you didn't spend them? Those types of things. So it doesn't always have to be a new program. It could be just the way you manage your budgets and get the work done effectively. Are you identifying additional business units? I think we get so siloed or focused on the work that we're doing as opposed to looking around and saying, are there additional business units or additional business opportunities with this client that we can help solve problems for them? Are you just asking them, hey, what's your strategic imperatives? The old, what's keeping you up at night, right? And none of this is rocket science. None of the things that we're trying to coach agencies on is rocket science, but it's a matter of stepping back and having the time to look down the road and training your people to think this way. And one of the other big things is looking for, so if you've had an account for multiple number of years, where are those dips? Where are those dips in activity? Where are those dips in revenue throughout the calendar year if you're not a retainer, if it's project-based work? Get out in front of those trends, those dips, and problem solve and offer a solution that's going to help, sell stuff. And that's really what we're doing in marketing, is we're helping clients sell more of the stuff they sell. And so try to help them solve those problems and, constantly evaluate that client relationship. Is it a positive relationship? What kind of client do you have? Do you have a relationship where you can make the ask? Are you not spending enough time with them? Those types of things. So there's just ways we feel like if you were proactive about it, if you start the business right, have a mission statement with that client. Really talk about how we're going to work together. What goals do we have on a personal level working with each other, not just about delivering the scope of work. For me as an account lead, it was always paramount for me to know how my client was reviewed. How do I help them personally? And if you're helping them personally, we were talking before and using the word inoculate, you kind of inoculate yourself against, any rough patches, because there's going to be rough patches. But the deeper that relationship is and the more you're problem solving, you can withstand some of those rough patches because they're going to come. We've all been there. We know it's going to happen, right? So.
Yep. So beyond working with you, what are some immediate steps agencies can take to spark organic growth?
Again, do the proactiveness appraisal. It's on our website. You can take a look at it, or I can share it if you like. But it's literally, hey, red or green. Are you doing this? Or are you not doing this? And if you're not, you should be. Organize your giving. One of the things we'll sit down and do with a client is, before you go out and start trying to sell in more stuff, let's get paid for the stuff we're already doing. We bend over backwards for clients. We overservice. I think the rule of thumb is most agencies said, hey, I'll overservice to about 10%. But, where are you giving it away? So I think, you and I have had this conversation, but, get on a whiteboard and write down every little thing you do for a client, whether you scope for it or not. And include junior staff in this conversation. What things are they doing for the client because they've been taught to bend over backwards? but evaluate all those things you're doing. Then once you've got that list, all right, from that list, what am I getting paid for? And if there's things you're not getting paid for, how do I monetize those things? How do I productize those things? And again, I know it's not easy to walk across the street to a client and say, hey, I've been giving this to you for a couple of years. Now you have to pay me. That's where the account planning comes in and getting out in front of those things and trying to solve for those. We talked about the scope of works evaluation. One of the principles is to listen. As communicators and marketers, oftentimes we want to do a lot of talking so we sound smart and we're validating the money they're spending with us. But it's like your mom told you, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them in proportion. So I think lots of times if you're listening, you will hear opportunity. And it's understanding what tools are in your toolbox. You'd be surprised some of the agencies we've worked with that, especially some of the bigger ones, you'll talk to an account lead and they don't even know all the capabilities of their agency, which to me is just crazy. But if you understand what you're capable of doing and have that at fingertip, you hear opportunity, you can apply some of those, products or services or whatever your agency calls them in solving and create some new opportunities. We talked about managing for great results, but be present. Be present, walk those halls as many times as you can. Even if it's you have to, we talked about organizing your giving. If you got to flip the plane ticket and get there and just have a reason to spend a day or two in the halls with that client, you have so many other ancillary conversations. And if you're doing great work, they're going to introduce you to other people. You're going to have across the transom type conversations. And I'm encouraging account leads to take the number 2 with them. Create that transfer of trust so you can expound the relationships. And the more relationships you can have, the more opportunities you're going to create. And then have some patience. It's not going to be, there's some tricks of the trade of trying to, flip a switch and get some immediate return, but there's a lot of planting seeds and seeing the returns on those. Just going over some numbers for one of our clients this morning and how some of the accounts we work with have started the year. These same 10 accounts last year were struggling with attrition and making their numbers. Now 8 of those 10 are already exceeding their forecast for the year because they put those foundational things in place. So they're reaping some of the rewards of the seeds they planted last year.
Awesome. So you gave a lot of great advice there. Any advice that you have for agency leaders or account leads that may run counter to what we've been taught?
Yeah, ask for an account review. We always hear those words, account review, and we're like, oh gosh, we must be in trouble.
Ooh, scared.
Yeah, our business is up for review. But I say ask for it. Don't forget your clients are human beings, right? Treat them like human beings. Don't be scared of them, but ask for those account reviews. And what you're going to hear as humans, right, is here's what we like about what you're doing. Here's some areas for improvement. And then say, hey, where are we winning and where are we losing on the brand side? So it's, if you'll walk out of there and there's some humility to it and allow them to say, hey, listen, this is what we've been unhappy with, or we wish you did this, or we wish you did less of that, you'll walk out of that room an assignment or 2. And so that's the value of setting up that client agency mission statement in the beginning, because it gives you something to go back and review together. So it's, it's constant, it's the Six Sigma principle of Kaizen, right? It's constant improvement. And so if you're constantly getting better and they see that earnest effort that you're trying to get better and you care about their business, you'll get more business. But at the end of the day, it's great results. I think there's a couple of stats we use. They were from an article from Harvard Business Review a couple of years ago, so they may have changed. But at that time, it was 96% of clients don't complain, right? And then 89% of those clients say they were happy with their agency right before they fired them. Yep. So if you're not checking in, it's I've used the term checking the gas before. It's it's the idea, would you drive a car and not check the gas gauge? And you've got to check in and do some of those things. But the other thing too is we talk a lot about when we give presentations. This guy Ignaz Semmelweis. Ignaz was a doctor back in the mid 1800s, and he was for lack of a better term, a baby doctor, right? So the infant mortality rate was through the roof, and they just couldn't discover why. Well, he had this theory: if you would wash your hands which I think is pertinent right now to what's going on around us. But if you would wash your hands, then you were removing these germs, and the mortality rate started to go up, right? So, but his colleagues thought he was so crazy for thinking you should just wash your hands. They had him institutionalized, and he died in an institution, right? So we're saying, hey, listen, don't be afraid to unlearn some of the ways you've been taught to do things. Lots of times it's manage the work, get the results, and just get to that next scope of work. Well, manage for great results, but also be looking for other ways to add value. Even if you have to give some of it away, do your giving purposefully. So we talked about, we give away a lot. Well, if you're going to give it away in a purposeful way to get some value back. So we always use that story as saying, hey, listen, just the smallest change, washing your hands, can make the biggest impact, maybe culturally, and if you're willing to listen to a different point of view, it could have great impact. And it doesn't often take some monumental shift and approach. It could just be the smallest thing of the way you're approaching account service that'll open up some organic opportunities for you.
All right. This has been very, very good stuff. Very good content. What's the hardest part about creating organic growth? What's the biggest challenges that you run into?
Being honest with yourself that you're the problem. I think oftentimes you got to be able to sit down and say, what is it that we haven't done, or what is it that we did do that inhibit us from that growth? Some of the excuses we use, like I said before, is the client constantly changed course, the competition spent more money, they were hard to work with, they were just a jerk. Insert your explicative there. But really the excuses should be, we didn't listen carefully, we never clarified how we were going to work together. Our internal screw ups killed us. I mean, that's the stuff. If you're managing for excellence, and listen, we're all going to have screw ups, but you can't have them so much that it undermines your ability to effectively offer counsel and do work for those people, because you have to look at it. I think we've had this conversation in the past. You have to look at the fees they're paying you as an investment, not only in your agency, but it's an investment in their company, and they're looking for a return. So they want to be led. And I think oftentimes, you got to put a stake out there and say, look, again, that account plan, we're going to lead them to this. And it's evaluating what you're doing. What credibility bridges do you have to get to new additional work? But the hardest part sometimes is admitting that you are the problem, or that you haven't done the things that are necessary. And again, it's because I believe, my personal theory is that, again, liberal arts majors, we're not taught business until we get on the job. And then, if you work at a big agency like, we have, lots of times they're like, hey, don't worry about the financials. Just do what you do. Be creative, be strategic. But I think having understanding of why you're being asked to do what you're doing, it inevitably allows people to be more personally invested in the work. And I think you get a better work product. And again, great work gets you more work.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been fantastic. I think there'll be, questions, and you can obviously engage with agency owners in the stable where we'll post and other social media, agency match, and so on. But anything else you'd like to add? And also, what's the best way to reach you? You want to give your website, email address, and contact info?
Yeah, thanks. It's tpcgrowth.com. You can also find us on LinkedIn, or our numbers on the website. They can give us a call. But the website's, all of our information is there. But the thought of it is just the willingness to think about things in a different way. You don't have to drive your business through constantly chasing RFPs. That's an expensive proposition. And if you are out there chasing those, do you have a no-go strategy? When do you say when chasing something if there's 10 other agencies or 6 other agencies? You've done the hard part. You've won a piece of business. Now let's invest a ton of resources in growing that. It takes some pressure off of finding a business all the time.
Love it. Awesome. Very good. Well, I appreciate your time, and we'll definitely hope people connect with you and interact more. But just thanks for coming on the show today.
No, thanks for having me. I really, really appreciate it.